Malcolm, you are about to release your book, What Winners Won't Tell You. My first question for you is just what compelled you to write this book?
Well, I just finished, actually, I was at the end of, a 13-year career. I was actually still playing. And, 2020, I think, really put a lot of people in isolation, got you thinking. And I really got to thinking about, my whole career, what I had been through, and realized that I wanted to tell that story. I didn't know exactly how, but I just started to kind of piece something together. And then over the next couple of years, that story came to fruition, and it's what winners won't tell you. But I really wanted to contextualize the things that I've been through, to leave kind of a blueprint for those who come behind me, for those who are looking for insights to how to be successful, how to be a leader, what goes into fatherhood and family. All of those things, are in this book. How I, were able to take my platform and have as much impact as possible. Those are things that I wanted to make sure didn't just leave because I was changing, positions, changing careers, and so I put it into this book, and that was something that was definitely therapeutic. Is parts that are very very vulnerable that I haven't talked about. There's obviously a lot of things that everyone being in the limelight, everyone's watched some of these games and seen some of these moments, but I've allow people to see my inner thoughts and bring them into my view, which is a different perspective, to maybe look at those moments a little differently. But I thought it was important. I think all of us have stories, and I think one of the most impactful things that we can do is share.
What do you think are the biggest things people can learn from reading this book?
I think there are a ton of things that people can learn. It just depends on where you are in life. I'm excited personally to see what athletes, and those around athletes, how they digest this book. So, everything from not only the demands of the on-field or on-court performance, but the demands of, being a high performer, what that does to the family around you, the business of sports, all of these things I've had to navigate and are very, very important, as sports, is a cornerstone of our society. There's a lot that goes around, and goes into what we watch on TV. And so I want people to get a better insight of that, but also, people who are looking for examples of people who know how to persevere and who are always curious. I'm somebody who's always been a forever learner, and I don't, deal with. I stopped focusing on wins and losses, and really dedicated myself to the details of the process and learning that the enjoyment of life is in the process. It's not in the game. We don't get to control the results of our competitions, but what we do control is how we play the game, and that's really what I want people to leave with.
You mentioned that, it's not about the wins and losses for you. I mean, how important is it for you that your legacy is not just what you accomplished on the football field?
I mean, it's huge because we watch it every year. There's new players, there are new records, and once those relics and things like that are shared, it's like, well, then what are you? And we see athletes dealing with that, and I'm currently dealing with it now. Like you have to redefine your identity, and oftentimes we've wrapped our identity so much into what we do, so much into what we've accomplished, and what titles we can assume. But when you strip us from those titles, you take the trophies and the rings away. It's like, who are you and what are you? And I think that is really what, at a very early age, I kind of had a grasp on that, or at least those questions were being asked to me, and I've been developing on working on those. So for me, if all you remember is what I did on the field, then I failed. Because I put a lot of effort into a ton of other things, but I want impact. Essentially everything I do, I want to have impact. The way I play the game, I wanted to impact the fans watching. I wanted to impact my teammates that I play with. When I do things in the community, I want to impact youth. I want to impact and strengthen communities. I want to do business, that have impact. I don't care to just make all the money I can in the world. I want to set up my community, my family, my friends, and be an example. So those things for me, really transcend sports. It gives me a purpose of waking up every day. I can shed myself of all of those accolades and still look forward to something else. And that took a long time, but it's definitely, now I'm being on this end, I see how it's helped me in this moment of transition where, my peers are struggling. A lot of us are struggling, dealing with leaving the game and leaving what we thought was so important, leaving what the world cheered us on for. And then to be left with yourself and not like what you see. And I think that's a lot of people can relate to that story. So hopefully my journey, bears some witness to how to maneuver around that.
What are the biggest things that you are now investing your time into now that you're no longer playing football?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is family. I've sacrificed so much time, and a lot of us do, to work, to go pursue our dreams, and that takes away from your time as fatherhood and things like that. So, being in having joint custody for my kids is like, when I'm with them, that is all I'm doing, and then I'm spending the other half of my time learning, and then I use what I learn. I'm always curious, so whether it's learning, reading books, is traveling, is learning from other people in fields that I'm trying to get into, always learning and applying it to myself. So it's constantly growth. Is growth in how I've developed as a leader, is growth in the interests I'm in and how I think about doing business, is growth even, physically, and how I want to feel, moving forward. All of that is essentially learning and applying it to all of the things that I've built over the years. So, I've have a portfolio of businesses. I've got decades worth of community work and social work. Um, but now it's like, how do I learn the thing? How do I take all the things I've learned over those last 13 years and apply them in every facet of life? How do I take that same mentality and approach, my businesses the same way I approach the game? That part is new and it's fun and it's exciting. It's where, I get to feel like a rookie again. And that gives me a little bit of energy.
When you think back on your time at Ohio State, what are the biggest things you learned there that you've taken with you, whether it be into the NFL or the rest of your life?
Man, I realized that you need community. Like being, a kid from New Jersey who grew up in a really diverse, background, to get plucked out of there and then go to Columbus, Ohio, to Ohio State, which is, is very white for me. Right? It was like the worlds were so different that I really was lost for a little while because I didn't have a sense of community. I had the football team, but when I wanted to do things outside of football, I didn't have it. And then I found it through my fraternity. I found it through getting involved on campus, and all the great things that are happening, in that school and in that community. That gave me a sense of purpose. That gave me a sense of home away from home. That has allowed me to, move to different places and understand how to maneuver, how to have impact, how to create community, how to get out into the world, but also have your safe haven. Those are all lessons that, I learned at Ohio State, and mainly because of Jim Tressel. I tell people all the time, I don't think he's ever coached me a single thing about football. It's all been about how to be the best man you can be, the best citizen you can be. He was the guy that used to say the punt was the most important play of football, things like that. And so for me, when I look back on my time, I think very little about football, and I think a lot about my experience on campus. I stayed at Ohio State my senior year because I was having so much fun. And I wasn't ready to go to the league, even though that was my dream. I'm like, I'll stay for another year. I want to finish school, enjoy what I'm doing because I had literally created, a new home on campus.
I know that you're going to be back at Ohio State to be inducted into the Ohio State Athletics Hall of Fame. Just what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a huge honor, and this, is really humbling because I wasn't really aiming, for those things. You hope that the work that you put in and the things that you create in this world have longevity and are appreciated long after you've done them. And so, to have gone on this journey, left Ohio State, and to be recognized in the Hall of Fame is just, it just puts the bow on all of those things that I did, so long ago, and hopefully, um, those who are following behind me just see that as an example. I remember Mike Doss pointing out to me, the kind of the Ohio State greats, and he pointed to Antoine Winfield, who was the only person that had ever won the Jim Thorpe Award at the time in Ohio State history, and how motivating that was for me. Just seeing that example, like, oh, that's what it takes to be the best in the country. Okay, now I'm doing everything that dude did, to try to get there. And so hopefully my example, is one that not only athletes but people in general will follow.
What is your advice to the guys who are playing at Ohio State right now?
Life is bigger than ball. And like life is ball too. And so we get this, there's this narrative now. It's like I'm more than an athlete, right? And it's like, yes, it's kind of cliche, but it's like, what does that really look like? What are you doing to develop yourself outside of sports? And one of the things that it's becoming very clear now that I'm out of sports, you have to really sit with yourself and figure out, who am I? And you realize that all of these things that you've done in sports has prepared you to be excellent in the world. You've been in a highly competitive environment. You've learned everything about leadership. You've learned conflict resolution. You know how to be disciplined. You understand how to take instruction. You understand how to lead. Like, all of these things. You're going to be very, very valuable in the world somewhere else. The only way you won't be is if you continue to see yourself as just a football player. If you don't see how those things are add value to any organization out there. And so to me, that's really the biggest thing is for them to understand, especially in college athletics right now, you are a business, and so you have the ability to empower others around you just by what you do for a living, the stages and platforms you are. So soak up as much information as possible. Bring your family and those who are closest to you into that process so that they learn. And because the longer it's like an investment. The earlier you invest, the more return you see on the back end. And so there are athletes right now that I'm saying, invest in yourself now, because when you're done, and this game will be done with you, you will be done playing sports at some point in time, whether they kick you out or you leave, on your own accord, it will be over. And when you're over it, that's really where your life is going to begin. So start that investment now.
You mentioned looking up to guys like Antoine Winfield, Mike Doss. Have you had the opportunity to get to know any of the current Ohio State players?
No, I've been away from it for a few years. Yeah, I don't know many of these guys personally. I kept in touch with a lot of guys when I first got out of the league, but 13 years is a long time. It's a lot of turnover. And so no, I'm watching as a fan from afar. I don't even know. I feel old now. I don't even know if they really know my story or engage with me besides how I saw Antoine Winfield kind of on the ball. So it's one of those things where, I look forward to getting back up there for the Hall of Fame, getting around the team, but definitely in the stands watching like a fan from like everybody else.
Well, I think that answers my questions for you. Is there anything else you want people to know?
Nah, I mean, when it comes to, my story and my journey, I think, Ohio State and my time in Columbus, Ohio was super integral. Like, I learned a lot about myself. I learned about, what it meant to be a man. I learned tradition and rivalry, and made friends that are still my friends to this day. And so, we say how firm that friendship, but it's a true, I live by that, and it's been, I'm really grateful for my time there.
And where can people get a copy of the book?
Yeah, so you can go to whatwinnerswon'ttellyu.com. You can pre-order it. I would encourage you to pre-order so you can get it as fast as possible. But definitely within that first week, it drops October 3rd. Get you a copy. I really opened up to some things that I probably won't talk much about moving forward. But man, I had an amazing run. I tried to bring everybody with me on that journey, my fans, my family, my friends. And so hopefully everybody reads this and sees a little bit of themselves. I'm grateful for everyone who had a hand in my journey, my career, and developing me into who I am today. And hopefully this story reflects that.